You are listening to the Mark Guzman Podcast Experience. With many cities currently passing new laws that affect homeowners, a small percentage of realtors actually get involved. This is our industry, and as realtors, we should all be involved at the forefront of housing politics. My guest today is Denise Kees, and she's a prime example of an involved realtor. On this episode, we discuss the City of Oakland, gentrification, a lawsuit against City of Berkeley, local government relations committees with local Realtor Associations, and we discuss the Women's Council of Realtors. This is a packed episode and our very first episode in our brand new podcast studio. Enjoy. Welcome to a new year. It's 2018, and my first guest for 2018 is Denise Kees, and I'm excited for this episode because we've been friends for a while. I met you back in, I want to say 2011.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, we met in Oakland at a YPN, Oakland YPN network.
Yes,
event.
We did. Yes, when we were doing lots of new and exciting things. I think we had only had our chapter or our network for about a year at that time, and we were just really excited about it. And you were one of those first people that came out and
it was a Japanese restaurant. Was it Ozumo's?
It was Ozumo's.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah, and so I'm excited to have you on this podcast because one of the things, we became Facebook friends very quickly. Mm-hmm. We've ran into each other at various events throughout the years, and one thing that I really love to follow your Facebook is your involvement with local politics. You're constantly just involved, and not just involved to a certain extent of, just advocating for something. You're actually going to the city council meetings and taking photos and then putting together actual, I want to say that they're close to white papers sometimes on Facebook posts and explaining why something's good and bad and how it's going to affect people. So that's the main reason I really wanted you to be on this show, and I think you're going to provide a lot of value to the listeners here.
Oh, thank you.
So let's start with your background. What year, and in fact, before we went live, we were just talking, 2003 is when you got into real estate.
That's the official year that I got into real estate, but it actually started way before that. So I'm a second-generation broker. My father got into real estate around 1992, and during that time, you could do, with a real estate license, you could do loans and real estate. So he got involved in the mortgage business, and one of my first jobs, and this just goes to show how old I am, was I was there before Calyx. So when people had to fill out a 1003 or a loan application, they had to do it by hand. And so my first job in real estate is when I was about 10 or 11 years old, I would take the loan applications and recopy them because my handwriting was neater than my dad's or his clients. So that was my first foray into real estate. And then when I graduated school, I came back and I started managing his office. I got my broker's license in 2005, and I've been in real estate ever since.
Now, what's your involvement look like with the local association?
So I started getting involved actually in 2009 with Women's Council, and that was a great experience. It was a lot of work, but it was a great experience. And then I was appointed as a YPN chair in 2010, and I want to say I was elected to the board for Oakland Association in 2011. And then we merged with Berkeley, and I was a board director up until this year, in fact. So just a lot of time at the association.
That's a lot of time volunteering.
Yeah. I love volunteering. I love I love giving back, and especially to an industry that has given me and my family so much. I mean, my father was able to send my brothers and myself through college. We were able to go to private school. We were able to just do so much because of real estate, and so giving back to it is a no-brainer.
Now, what was one of the reasons you decided to volunteer in organized real estate?
One big reason was my dad. He was like, baby girl, you got to do something. Get out there. Put your name out there. Another reason was I was very active when I was in college in a lot of volunteer organizations. I was active in my sorority. I was pre-law at the time, so I was active in a lot of pre-law societies. I was active in a lot of politics that were going on campus, referring to social justice and things like that. So it was just a natural extension of something that I was already doing. So it wasn't a stretch. It wasn't that much of a stretch. But I think the best way to really find out about something is to get involved. And I always encourage, especially new agents, go to the associations, find something you like to do and do it. You'll meet a lot of friends, you'll have a lot of support. You know, a lot of people don't realize real estate is it can be a hard, lonely business. And sometimes it's nice to pick up the phone and talk to your realtor friends and just, you know, they'll understand and they can help you out and help you through. So it's really, I think, important aspect of being a member of an association, I think, is to volunteer however you can.
Yeah. One of the biggest benefits for me has been the referral network. Mm-hmm. Just being able to meet people all over the state and even locally in areas that I don't work in. Mm-hmm. You know, just San Francisco, for example, mm-hmm. right? And just being able to refer people back and forth. I mean, it's just amazing. It makes the volunteer time pay for itself.
It does. And there's definitely that aspect to it. I actually, through Women's Council and through volunteering at the state level, CAR, I've met a lot of people from all over the state, really good friends, really good networks, really good referrals, really good mentors. And there's just no way I would have met those people if I did not get involved. So it really does and can pay for itself.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the Women's Council of Realtors, because that's something many people don't even know it exists.
Yeah.
And it's been around for a long time. And it's continuing to grow. And at the state level, and now, do you serve on the state level also?
No, not for Women's Council. Unfortunately, the chapter that we had locally, I think it was closed in either 2013 or 2014. And it was just due to low membership numbers. You have to maintain a certain membership. But Women's Council, when I was involved locally and when I would go to the state meetings, I mean, these are some dynamic, powerful women. And a lot of the women that I know and knew through Women's Council are also very active in CAR, in their local chapters, even NAR. One of my favorite people in the world, Miss Sherry Souza, out of Livermore. She just completed her tenure as the national president of Women's Council, and she's still very much involved. But she is a dynamo, and every time I see her, she just has so much wisdom to give. But if you look at a lot of the state leaders, you will see that they have experience in Women's Council. Even our most recent past state president was involved in Women's Council. So it's not just for women, it's for men as well. And it's just, I have nothing but good things to say about the organization.
That's amazing. What are some of the challenges that women face in real estate that the Women's Council tries to fix?
I would say that the challenges women face in real estate are the challenges that a lot of women face in a lot of other industries. Real estate is not actually at the agent level. It's not male dominated. It's slightly female heavy. But once you start getting towards brokerage, broker owners, managers, things like that, it starts to skew very heavily male. Women's Council was started in part because if let's say we were selling a new development, you would sell a house and you would get a check. I would sell a house and I'd get a bottle of champagne, which is nice. I like champagne, but I can't pay bills with champagne. So it was kind of like, okay, we got into this business to make money. And just because I'm a woman doesn't mean that I'm worse at business or that I don't need the benefits of business, which is profit. So Women's Council really organized to make sure that women voices were heard in organized real estate, and it's taken off since then. I think today I would still say one of the biggest things is making sure women get into more ownership positions, making sure women get into more leadership positions, and so Women's Council still has a use and has a need. But I would also say that on a lot of levels, organized real estate really looks towards Women's Council as a way to select new leaders and to kind of cherry pick the best of the best. And so it's really exciting that Women's Council is looked at as a leadership incubator.
Now, you said there's no local chapter anymore. Is that correct?
Not in the, I would say, Berkeley, Oakland area. So the chapter that I served, Women's Council East Bay, it serviced Oakland Association, Berkeley Association, and Alameda Association, which is a lot of territory. And it's also, when you serve multiple associations, you have to deal with multiple cultures. And at the time when I was doing it back in 2009 and 2010, they were three very distinct cultures. And so trying to find a centralized location versus, do we go to each association? How do we speak here and speak here? How do we address the issues of, the micro markets versus the overall East Bay market? So it was a lot of balancing and a lot of juggling. There have been talks about reviving Women's Council, especially since Berkeley and Oakland Association merged, and that would be very, very exciting. So I'm looking forward to that. But I think that was one of our biggest challenges. We were trying to serve a lot of different consumers without really solidifying who we were and showing our value proposition, which we have a lot of. We just didn't know how to kind of market that. So I'm hoping in the future that if Women's Council does come back, now that there's just one association in that area, we'll have an easier time and the support of the association to kind of get it going again.
Do you know what year it started?
The local chapter, I want to say the East Bay local chapter was one of the first. It started in 1944. I think the oldest in the state was Long Beach, and that started in, I want to say, 1939. Okay. So it's been around for a very, very, very long time.
Now, you do mainly real estate in Oakland, correct?
Yes.
And you sell houses, you represent buyers. Which one is your favorite, or which one's your niche between the two?
So firm-wise, our niche is really first-time home buyers. My father has really, really made that his thing. I think part of that is because he was the first time he ever lived in a house, the first time he ever owned a house just in life was after I was born. So I have an older brother. So he was in his 30s. And that experience didn't turn out the greatest. And he wanted to make sure that other people who were, had never owned a home before and were going into it didn't have the same experience that he did. So he really made that his thing. I would say my favorite aspect of real estate is working with either business owners or people who are looking to build a portfolio. I like the numbers aspect of it. I like the, okay, how can we find a solution to this issue to, set you on a path of really getting involved in real estate as either an investor or a business owner or something like that. Although my second favorite is actually the first-time home buyers. It's a lot more education and a lot more hand-holding, but it's also much more rewarding because a lot of times we deal with clients who probably never thought they would be able to own a home. And when we get them in there, they're just so excited, just so excited. And that just makes me excited. So I really like that part too.
That's awesome. Now, you've lived and worked in Oakland all your life.
Yes. Oakland native, born and raised.
Now, I know Oakland has a lot of politics.
Oh, boy.
Local real estate politics happening all the time.
Yes.
So educate us a little bit on what are some of the current issues going on in Oakland and what's the pros and cons.
Okay. So I'm full disclosure, I am the co-chair for our local government relations for our association. And so must be as diplomatic as possible, and I will be, but I will be frank too. I think one of the things that's going on in just all over, but it's really, really, focused in Oakland is the issue of gentrification and displacement. And that is coloring a lot of the politics around housing. The Bay Area, California in general, the Bay Area in particular, has not been building as much housing that they need, and they haven't been doing that for decades. And now, after 10 years after the recovery, the economy has picked up. A lot of jobs are coming to the Bay Area. There's a lot of people that are migrating into the Bay Area, and they need a place to live. And I always say that if I have $1 million and I cannot buy $1 million home, well, then I'm going to look at the $800,000 home because it's available and I know I can get it. Well, that puts downward pressure on the people who have $800,000 and they can't get into the $800,000 home. So then it goes down to, okay, well, I'm going to look at the $600,000 home. Well, there's a floor to that. And, for people who, okay, I have $200,000. There's no homes for $200,000. I guess I'm never buying a home. And so,
or they have to commute to Modesto.
Or they have to, like the hinterlands. Like it's like an epic journey. And that's really not fair for all involved. And so one of the things that we try to do is we try to advocate for policies that will build more supply and also advocate for policies that don't punish homeowners or property owners because they have property. And I understand that there's a real hurt and there's a real pain around renting in the Bay Area, just like there's a real pain around home buying in the Bay Area. And I hope that our politicians really sit down and think it through. But I think a lot of policies are coming out of a almost knee-jerk reaction. It's like you want to do the right thing, and so, okay, let's just do this. But then you don't think about, well, this leads to this, and this can cause a problem further down the line. It's like nobody's thinking about the further down the line. And so, for instance, there's an item coming up in January in Oakland talking about installing a uniform relocation fee for people who are doing owner move-in evictions. And basically what it does is and this is in Oakland, and this will set up that if there's a certain amount of rooms in the house, then there's a certain amount of money that you have to pay, and you pay it to the tenant, and then you can move in. Well, the people that do owner move-in evictions, for the most part, and there's always exceptions, but for the most part, it's if you're buying a house that has a tenant in it, well, then you're going to want to move in. Especially if it's a single-family home. And so you would do an owner move-in eviction. So if you're a first-time home buyer and you're using the FHA loan and you scrape together your 3.5% or maybe 5%, and you got your closing costs, and then you have to deal with the transfer taxes and the sewer lateral and all these other additional costs. Well, now the city is telling you that you have to come up with another, $6,500 to $12,000 to move into your home. So what is that going to do? That's either going to cut down on inventory that is already non-existent, or, make it that much harder for you to save up to move in, or just completely put you out of the market. We were able to work with the city, and they have made some adjustments to the rules, or to the ordinance. So we're hoping that helps alleviate some of the issues that could come up. But what we're hoping to do is that moving forward, we're able to kind of sit down and help think through and strategize so that we can together, politicians, realtors, tenants' rights, people in the community, just everybody just really come together and really come up with some really effective long-term strategies to address what's going on in the area.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to compromise. I mean, I'm sure City of Richmond just recently passed rent control just cause.
Yeah.
And they have in that ordinance if you're an owner relocating back into the property, let's say it's a 2-bedroom or bigger property, you're going to have to pay $8,000 for someone to move out.
Yeah.
So again, going back to the first-time home buyer, if you're buying a home that's tenant occupied, you will have to pay them $8,000 just for you to move in. You have to give them 60 days, and there's a lot of rules that come into play. I've sold some properties in Richmond where they're tenant occupied. I do property management, and so we'll sell some properties, and unfortunately they sell for a lot less than what they're worth because the buyer doesn't have the extra cash to come in and pay someone $8,000 or even $10,000 if they qualify under a certain guideline. So people just avoid those homes.
Yeah.
And so you have to drop the prices dramatically just to get them sold to someone who's got the money to come in and pay them off. Or an investor that comes in and says, hey, I'm going to snatch this up at a good deal and rent it out.
And see, that's my concern, that the people who want to occupy the properties won't be able to occupy those properties. The value goes down. Or, and this is my biggest concern, because Oakland has a ton of single-family homes, especially as you go southeast of the lake. They just won't be rented. And so now you have people who don't have access to housing stock that have to move all the way out to Modesto or Stockton or Tracy to rent and then do that, whole long commute, and that just adds to displacement. Or you have people who have, they inherited a property from their grandparents or their parents, and they were really thinking about, moving in there one day, but one day is not today, but it doesn't make any sense for them to rent and deal with all of this, so they sell it, and then, when they really do want to move into it, they can't. This happened in West Oakland, in West Oakland, which is like the poster child for displacement and gentrification in Oakland. It was very heavily black occupied, very heavily black owned. I know my grandparents, when they moved from the South during the Southern migration, one of the first places they stopped was West Oakland, because my grandfather was in the Navy, and they ended up buying a place in East Oakland, but they had a lot of friends in West Oakland. And so when they built the freeway, when they built 880 through West Oakland, it decimated a lot of neighborhoods. Then there was, just a lot of disinvestment in that area. And then it was, the drug trade in that area. So just everything was just real dilapidated, real, just run down in that area. But it was still a vibrant community. And my father grew up in West Oakland, and he doesn't even recognize it anymore. Like, I remember back in the 80s and 90s, they were selling homes for $1 just to get rid of them. Can you imagine? Wow. Yeah. And now some of those properties are over $1 million, but there were a lot of people who were not and are not able to participate in that just because of disinvestment and then displacement and then reinvestment. And it's like, oh, well, now you're out the game. And I feel like, that could happen with some of these policies, as well-intended as they're meant to be. They're not helping renters become homeowners. They're not giving hope to people who think, oh, maybe I can buy a home here. It's like, okay, Oakland is popping now, but now I can't live here, even though I've been here when it wasn't. I mean, Oakland's always been popping, but like now everybody knows it, right? But now I can't participate as a long-term Oakland resident. And that, to me, that's just sad. And so I really hope that through our advocacy and really wanted to help create solutions, that we can, in fact, create solutions so that we are able to invite people who are coming to Oakland and want to live here and build here just like everybody else. And then those who have been in Oakland for a long time and just want to make sure that the culture and the vibrancy and just everything that makes Oakland great remains great, and that they can, participate fully as, long-term Oakland residents.
Yeah, I know Berkeley is going through a similar lawsuit right now where, and I can't remember the name of the street, but
probably Haskins.
Yeah. Single-family homes, and someone wants to build a second unit in the back. Homeowners got up in arms, like on that neighborhood, on that street, political pressure, City of Berkeley, I believe, denied the
Mm-hmm.
permit,
Mm-hmm.
even though it's zoned, and they technically should allow
Mm-hmm.
that person to build a second unit in the back. And so now that person is suing the City of Berkeley. Now at Long Beach for the California Association Realtors Expo, they had a law firm that was there speaking on this exact situation, and it was very interesting. We're 1.5 million units short in California,
Mm-hmm.
and it comes down to a supply and demand issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
And very, very easy way to fix it is if 25% of all single family homes, that's it, 25% of all single family homes decided to build a second in-law unit in the back, problem solved.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's funny because one of my broker friends was heavily involved in that project, and he has a lot of opinions about it. But it's true. There is land to build, and there is opportunity to build. It's just people don't know how to do it, and then you add politics to it. And so it makes it harder with the Berkeley. And there was an article about it in the New York Times, actually, which a couple weeks ago, which kind of shocked me. But I would say that there are lots in Berkeley and Oakland, and probably other East Bay cities too, that you have way more land than house. And you can easily add a second, probably even a third unit to it. But people just really don't want that in their neighborhood. You know, the NIMBY is not in my backyard, which is really unfair because, you know, I'm a millennial, apparently, if depending on which graphic you go by. And so a lot of my friends are in the process now of, you know, major milestones, having kids, getting married, getting dogs. And they want to be able to have a house. They also want to be able to have a house in the city close by where they work. And it just seems like, you know, for people who have been in homes for, you know, years or decades, they bought it because they liked it and they don't want to change, which is fundamentally unfair. It's like, okay, so what are we supposed to do? Like, wait our turn? Like, I tell people, and this is, you know, dark humor, but it's like, you know, the only way some of my friends are going to be able to buy is when their parents die, because they can just move into the home. But that's what it's coming down to, because we're not looking at the actual realities of, we have a lot more people than we had 10, 15 years ago. We need to build more homes. How are we going to do that? If you are on a 7,500 square foot lot and your house is 1,000 square feet, you can add another unit back there. You know, like, why wouldn't you? What? And you don't go into your backyard ever? Like, you know,
And I think
like
the
that.
reality too is at some point we're going to have to build up too.
And that's definitely, people are looking at that. It's just a lot of people are afraid of density. They don't want it to be like New York City, is what I've heard. And it's funny because New Yorkers say that too. I went to school in New York, so I have a lot of friends in New York. They're like, I don't want it to be like that either. But it's like, you know, people have to live somewhere. And it's either you're going to have to invest in housing or invest in better public transportation. If I could get from Modesto to Oakland in 45 minutes, maybe I wouldn't mind, you know, living way out there. But I can't. It takes 3 hours. So I don't want to live way out there. But, I mean, it comes down to, what is it that people want, and what are they willing to give up in order to get it? And it seems like people want a lot, but they don't want to give up anything. And it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, what's very interesting, I don't know if you saw the news, I saw it this morning, but the CEO of Redfin, mm-hmm. he came out and he said, this is his prediction when it comes to the Bay Area and Silicon Valley. He says you're going to start seeing a big trend of people moving out of Silicon Valley. You have companies that are moving to Texas and Utah. Mm-hmm. You have Amazon who's leaving Seattle. And you're starting to see a lot of these tech companies that, and I believe Google is one of the biggest employers of engineers, and most of their engineers are employed outside of the Bay Area. Mm-hmm. They're not even here in the Bay Area. So he predicts you're going to start seeing a lot of tech companies move out of Silicon Valley. There's another, it's similar to a Silicon Valley outside of New York City. I want to say it's by Albany, New York.
I can't remember where it is. I know. So I went to Cornell University, which is in Ithaca, New York, and New York City was actually looking for a university to kind of anchor their, I don't know if the Silicon Valley East Coast, whatever they're calling it, and Cornell won that bid. And so I know a lot of friends who were, very excited about it, but also really, really trying to attract, trying to replicate what happened in the Silicon Valley, and also trying to attract people from, this area out. I know a lot of people have moved to Charlotte. Boston is another big area. Seattle, Colorado, like Boulder and Colorado Springs, I want to say, Denver, Austin, they are really looking at these secondary markets because it's just, housing, even with the Google paycheck, you cannot afford housing. That's crazy.
Companies like Google and Facebook also give their employees a stipend for housing. I mean,
they still,
they're making over $100,000 and getting the stipend for housing.
I've read so many crazy articles about just housing affordability. I remember there was an article about this guy who I want to say he got a job at Google, either Google or Facebook. And in order to save money, he literally bought a truck to live in, and he would just park his truck on the parking lot, and he was like, they have showers in there, they have food. I just, and I'm saving like $2,500 a month. That's crazy. There was a woman who was on, I want to say she was on an advisory board or some sort of council board in San Mateo, Palo Alto. She was, between her and her husband, I think she was a lawyer for tech companies, and he did something in tech. So between the two of them, they were making like $350,000 a year. They have roommates. They didn't own a house. They had roommates. They were roommates with another couple. And she said, I have to quit this advisory board because I'm moving out of the city because I can't afford to live here. And that's at the top of the pay scale. And that's absolutely insane to me. And it doesn't look like it's going to get any better. I do think that tech companies have a lot more power, and we'll see when they start moving away, because there was another article I read where there was a company in Silicon Valley who basically, it was cheaper for them to fly in lawyers from Texas than to hire lawyers in California because they were too expensive. That's absolutely insane. And if we don't really do something about it, it's only going to get worse. Now, do I think the California economy will collapse? No. Do I think that there will be a mass exodus out of California? No. But a lot of the things that drive our economy will be, we'll have to go out of state. And, what will that do to us, and what will that look like, especially, 10, 15 years from now?
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting, because if you have big companies move out of Silicon Valley, big tech companies, Silicon Valley today is kind of seen as the mecca for technology companies, mm-hmm. right? And so if these large corporations start moving out to other areas, I think the whole draw of Silicon Valley might disappear a little bit. Mm-hmm. Again, we're not going to see a Bay Area crash or anything, but you are going to see a little bit of that, and I think it's going to provide a little bit of relief. Okay, so we are back recording. Let me see if I'll probably stand up this way. So just to let everyone know, we're here in the new studio, and they're installing solar panels on the building, and the power just cut out, shutting down our entire system. And we are now recording off of our digital recorders, so the audio is going to sound a little bit different, and I think you might be hearing a lot more audio, so we'll get back into it. Now, Denise, you were saying it's Haskell?
I want to say it's Haskell.
Okay, so this is for the street of the Berkeley lawsuit we were discussing earlier. So let's get back to what we were discussing. So housing units, mm-hmm. the whole shortage, mm-hmm. Silicon Valley, we were just briefly talking about the potential move out of Silicon Valley. We might see an adjustment in the Bay Area housing, mm-hmm. assuming that actually happens. This is just a prediction of the CEO for Redfin. So let's go now. I know one thing that we've mentioned a lot here is LGR, the local government relations. Now, many realtors are not aware of how much the local associations really do for their industry. So I want to touch on this a little bit because we've thrown LGR out there on the podcast a little bit, but I want to explain it's the Local Government Relations Committee, and each association has one. And I think I served on it when we had West Contra Costa Association Realtors before we merged with Contra Costa Association. And I served on it for a few years. And even though our area of West Contra Costa was very small, not many things were happening at the time. Now a lot of things are happening. I mean, you have Richmond with the rent control ordinance, Just Cause. Then you have El Cerrito that's starting to consider a similar program. Then you have City of Pinole and Hercules that are looking at different ordinances. I mean, just a lot of different little things that happen.
Yeah.
And it seems like more and more cities now, because of political pressure from their constituents, are now really looking at whatever they can do to satisfy those people.
Yes.
So let's talk about the LGR committee. I think every realtor should at least serve on it 1 or 2 years to get a feel for it. I mean, I think just the knowledge and education you get from the different cities and politicians and just serving on that committee is huge. So what's been the biggest, I guess, positive that you've gotten out of serving on the local government?
I would say that the biggest positive I've gotten is just, realizing and just confirming that politicians are people too. They are human beings with all of the positives and negatives that any human being would bring to any position. They ran, which is not an easy thing to do. They ran and got elected in order to make change, positive change. They for the vast majority of them, they want to do good things for the people that they serve. And, they are very dedicated to the belief that public service is a public good. And so I think that, especially in the era that we're in, where like people are really entrenched on their political sides, and it's like there's almost a moral question, like, are you a Democrat or Republican or something like that? I think it's really important to recognize the fact that these people are human and they want to do good things. I think that as a realtor, one of the things that I hopefully bring, and hopefully that we as an organization and as an industry can bring, is just our expertise. We deal with all different kinds of people day in, day out. One of the biggest skills you have to have as a realtor is as a problem solver. And so, not everything is going to be perfect. Not everything is going to go the way you think it should or the way it probably should. But you still have to get it done. And I think that, with our local government relations, we have an opportunity to bring that skill set to people whose sole job it is to solve problems. So it doesn't seem right or fair or in anybody's best interest to avoid that. If you can help, you should help. And if you could help by giving your expertise or saying, before you do that, maybe you should think about this, or this is what we're seeing out here in the market or out here in the street when we talk to our clients, maybe you could think about that and how it will affect this. If you're not doing that at the, it's kind of like, what are you doing? That's how I feel about it. I think that, an easy way to get involved with your local government relations is, if you get an email saying, hey, we need y'all to show up at city council, show up. Like, just show up. You if you don't want to speak, which I know can be intimidating, especially, in certain cities. I'm not going to name any cities, but certain cities can get real like, oh my God, there's no way I'm going to get up there in front of everybody. And no. But, just showing up and being supportive. You can write a letter. You can make a phone call. You can talk to your client, just educate them on what's going on. When the whole uniform relocation fee first came out, I just made a Facebook post, and there were a lot of tenants that were like, well, I don't want that because I want to be a homeowner, So just educating them on what's going on, and just making sure that it makes sense, And yes, there will be compromise, and yes, there, you won't get everything that you want. But at the same time, if you do nothing, then you get nothing that you want, and it could result in some really, really bad policy. And if you can make bad policy better or help create good policy, then I really think that you should.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to policy, you brought up something that's very interesting right now, where some tenants will even say, hey, I don't want that because I want to be a homeowner one day. And I've ran into a lot of tenants that they listen and hear about the Richmond rent control policies, and they're like, hey, we're renters and we get it, but that's also a little extreme too, because they're like, we get the landlord point of view. It's an investment, it's their property, we get it. But you have a certain group that is more vocal, more involved, and if you don't get involved, they kind of take over.
The loudest voices in the room are the voices that will be heard, and that's unfortunate, but that is literally politics. You have to be involved, because if you're not, how are they going to know? They're not. Politicians do not have the time or the capacity to go and poll every single person that they represent. It's on you. No matter what your political affiliation, no matter what your ideology, it is on you to call your representative, so to make your voice heard, to make sure that they are representing you properly. If you do not do that and then go and complain that they're not representing you, that's your fault. I really, truly believe that. That's the obligation everyone has.
And the Association of Realtors makes it very easy. I mean, you sign up your phone number, they send you a text alert, you literally reply yes or no on the text, and it sends an automated message, letter, email, whatever the case is, or it directly connects you as soon as you click connect, and it makes it super easy. They even give you scripts. I mean, as a realtor, it's very easy to reach out to your
associations know their members, and they know that we are super busy people that don't always pay attention to every email that comes through, but they do make it easy for you on all levels, at the local level for sure, at the state level, and at the national level. I was actually really impressed. So, one thing that people may or may not hear about is something called the Realtor Party. And what the Realtor Party is it's a commitment to bipartisan good policy around housing. So it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, or it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or independent or whatever. The whole point of the Realtor Party is to make sure that our industry is protected, and that our clients are protected as well. Something that somebody reminded me of is there's no organized political action around property owners. We are it. Realtors are it. And a lot of the things that we fight for have really nothing to do with us directly, in terms of us making money, or us, licensing or legislating. It has nothing to do with our actual business, and everything to do with the clients that we serve. And I always say I serve, homeowners and future homeowners. So if you're a renter and you are ever thinking about becoming a homeowner, then I'm looking out for you too. And I think it's really important for realtors to get involved. NAR and CAR made a lot of headway, and they did a lot of advocacy on this recent tax thing that was passed. And no, it's not perfect in any way, shape, or form. And I'm saying this, coming from a high tax blue state, it's not perfect at all. And there's a lot of things that need to be looked at and changed properly. But, realtors did the best they could to make sure that it would still, it wouldn't basically crush the dream of being a homeowner.
Well, look at what the new initiative CAR wants to put out for 2018.
Exactly. And so, CAR is really coming out and, really trying to make it possible for seniors to not be burdened by the taxes that come if you've lived in your house a long time and it's appreciated in value, and it gets taxed when you sell it. If you want to downsize because you don't need the 4 or 5 bedroom 2-story house anymore, you just want a little flat 2-bedroom condo, but you've been in your house and you have capital gains and now you're being taxed up the wazoo. We really want to make it easy for you to transfer your tax basis no matter what county you're going to versus the very limited counties that you can transfer your tax basis to.
Yeah, right now, only 11
Only
of,
11.
I want to say 52 or 58 counties in California actually participate in it. And this initiative would make it across the board mandatory that you can sell your property, downsize, or even upsize, move your tax basis.
Yeah.
Now, if you trade up, there is a difference that's calculated and you pay taxes on that difference.
Mm-hmm.
But you can still keep your original tax basis on what you sell. And that's across the board. And it's funny because were you at the CAR expo?
I didn't go to the expo. Yeah.
So when they passed it, there was a lot of talk because it's going to be a very costly initiative.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the biggest concerns is the opposition against it.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to oppose it? What's going to be the opposition? Because there are going to be counties that claim, well, we're going to lose tax revenue,
mm-hmm.
and this is going to affect us. But of the 11 counties that already participate in it, they said there's no loss in tax revenue.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a trade. You get people that come in that end up paying more taxes, and you have people that go out that were paying less taxes. Then you get someone that pays a higher tax. Whatever. It washes out, and that they said was going to be the biggest opposition, and also various groups and associations that get income from tax revenue. So, but I think after the last few months of just putting the word out there, I haven't come across one person who said this is a negative thing.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, what everyone starts to think about is their own parents.
Their parents, their grandma, all of that. And
Exactly.
I mean, like, that was, I think it's important to think about, one of the reasons why there's a lock on supply is that you have older people who can't afford to move. They're house rich, but, if they sell their house, one, where they're going to move to that they can afford to move into, and two, if they find a place that they can afford, how much are they going to lose in taxes? And they may be on fixed incomes, there may be a lot of things that are going on. So I just really think that this is a really good way to show and highlight one of the things that realtors think about. This has nothing to do with us. If a person was going to move, they were going to move anyway. If they're moving to another county, I mean, I'm not going to go out to Stanislaus County to sell a house. Like, that's way too far. I'll probably refer that out. So it's not like it's just more business for the realtors. It's really thinking about, people who want to be able to move freely and can't due to, just the cost of the cost of living. And I think it's really something that we should think about as to, what is it that we're asking the people who live in our cities, in our counties, in our states? What are we asking of them? We want them to participate. We want them to live in vibrant cities. We want them to, obtain their highest educational achievement. We want them to do all of these things because it makes where we live better. But at what cost? And I think that we always need to look at the cost of what we're asking people to do. Sometimes people could do a little bit more, and we should ask that of them. Sometimes, governments can do a little bit less, and maybe we should ask that of them. But we constantly have to look at that balance to see if we're really doing the best for, where we live.
Love it. So I want to thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. This was fun. I was very nervous, but you made it very smooth, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, and very, very fun and interesting with the power going out on our first episode in the new studio.
Welcome to real estate. Like I said, we're problem solvers. We don't let stuff like that deter us, and we got it done. So.
Yeah. So thank you. And for people that want to contact you and work with you in Oakland, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Best way is you can contact me through my website, www.keesrealty.net. Kees is spelled K as in King, E as in Edward, E as in Edward, S as in Sam. There's no Y in my name. Also, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, which I love, actually. You can just contact me through social media at any time. And then we're on the corner of Dutton and Bancroft and San Leandro. So come by. Stop by. Feel free to visit. I'll buy you a coffee, and we'll have a good time.
Perfect. Well, thank you for being on the podcast, and Happy New Year's, and good luck to
Happy New Year, Mark. Thank you so much.
Your business.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Thank you to our producer, Sam Lubman. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share the podcast. Remember, you can listen to the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Google Play, SoundCloud, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. For more information on my business as a property manager and real estate team, go visit my website at markguzman.com. I really want to thank all of you for listening. It means the world to me, and I hope today's episode provides you value in your day-to-day life. I created this podcast to help showcase the many great people that live in this world and help share some knowledge that I've learned along the way in life. Again, thank you for listening. Check out our sponsors, and I'll catch you on the next episode.